Welcome back, everybody, to the Web3 game development live stream. I am John Radoff. I'm the CEO of a company called Beamable. We build live services infrastructure for games of all kinds. I'm accompanied by Oscar, our intrepid producer, who keeps this thing on track every week after week. And I'm so excited today because I've got one of my absolute favorite developers in the space, also a Beamable customer, Kevin Lambert, the one and only, from Koin Games, building Project O. And if you have been watching Web3 gaming, if you don't know about Project O, then I don't know where you've been for the last few weeks and months. You have not been paying attention. So if that's one of you, apologies for that. This is your chance now to learn about a very, very important game in this space. If you already are aware of Project O, this is your chance to get deep, learn some alpha here, but also if you're a game developer, like learn about what went into the thinking of this product, because I think that's what we bring week after week to this program is real developers, real designers thinking about the hard problems of building a product in Web3. And you're not getting that anywhere else. You're hearing about token speculation and when Moon and like when TGE. That is not this program. This program is like when amazing game. All right, so that's what we do here. So Kevin, I'd love you to just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about how you came to Web3, what you did before all this, and just give us a little preview of Project O and what you're hoping to build here.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm stealing When Amazing Game. I love it. That is, we need that to replace When Lambo for sure. That's awesome. So let's see. I've been in games going on 30. This will be my 30th year in professional game development. I started out as a programmer, but only as a means to an end to get into game design, which was what I really wanted to do. But they didn't have schools when I was growing up, so they didn't have things like DigiPen and Full Sail. So now there are a lot of those. So if you're out there and you're like, I'd love to get into game development, there are many ways to do that now. When I was growing up, not so much. You kind of had to know somebody, So I went the programming route because my folks understood it, and they were like, "We're worried about this game thing. What if it doesn't work out?" So my first 5 years were at a company that I'm sure you remember, John, called Monolith. I was one of the first hires there as a programmer, worked on some games there like No One Lives Forever and Shogo and Tron 2.0 and some 2D games like Grunts and Claw. And then got my first full-time game design job at Gas Powered Games working with Chris Taylor on Dungeon Siege 2. So I led the design team on that, 40 people, our big RPG. That was awesome. I love RPGs, still love them today. And that's, for those of you who are new, Dungeon Siege was like Diablo, but with a party back in the PC days. So worked on that. Then did a little startup. It got acquired by Activision and branded Sierra Online. So if that name rings a bell, worked on some games for Sierra. Then I got into casual games for a little while and explored this weird area of like games for grandma that I didn't really understand at the time. Worked for Big Fish Games, made some games there like Drawn, The Painted Tower. And then I co-founded the Microsoft Casual Game Studio, which was a casual game studio inside of Microsoft. And we got to redesign Solitaire and Minesweeper and Mahjong, all of these games that used to come with Windows back in the day, and they were like good time wasters, but they didn't have any sticky retention features and they weren't making any revenue. And now those games are, bringing in like 9 figures of revenue and 1 billion players and, a studio of like 35 to 40 people. It was incredible. I love that team. I honestly could have stayed there and retired there. It was just such a great business. But I got really excited about the Web3 intersection back in 2016, 2017. My tech background helped me understand it. I read the white paper for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I'm like, this is going to be insane for gaming. Like the gaming intersection, the experiences, that the digital property ownership, the monetization models, the business models, owning parts of the games themselves, building with the community. Like there are all these things that you can do that you really couldn't do it would be really hard to do, if not impossible, without being on, with blockchain involvement. So I just got really excited about exploring that. And this was at a time when the narrative was like, bro, drug dealers, money launderers, you're going to go to, they really discouraged me. And, and if you were looking at this, John, in 2017, like everybody was like, don't go do that. You're going to like torpedo your career if you do that. And I'm like, no way. There is no way. Like this sounds to me like the beginning of mobile in the 90s, where everybody's like free to play mobile. Like those games will never be as good as a $49.99 boxed product, because why? The games will suck. The monetization will be predatory. The quality, like you just will not be able to make a good game. These are going to be gone in like 5 years. And look what happened, right? Now there's amazing free-to-play mobile games. So like I see a rhyme with the Web3 attitude, because there's a lot of crap over there that we don't like. And I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic, but anyway,
this is the topic, because this is a game industry audience for sure. So
yeah.
I lived exactly what you're describing, because I launched games based on Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and Star Trek. And when I did Game of Thrones, it was 2012 that I started working on this game. And our target platform was Facebook, if you remember when Facebook games were a thing.
Yeah, of course.
And then mobile to follow that. But everyone was like, why are you like, that's not even really games. Like they call themselves games, but they're not actually games. Like absolutely. Diablo, that's a game. Call of Duty, that's a game. These aren't games. So I had to like endure that for years and years. And of course now mobile is more than half of the game industry. It's very significant.
So I knew that my next career move was going to be a Web3 game studio way back in 2017. And I had the luxury of waiting and finding the right time. And, like developers were the first people over into this space, and they're doing cool things with tech. And I'm looking at it and nodding and going, that is cool. But like, where are the games people? And people are like, you should check out CryptoKitties. And I'm like, that's not really a game. Bringing down Ethereum in 2018, I was there, but it was really cool. Like, okay, digital collectibles, that's interesting, neat. It was kind of like the beginning of NFTs before NFTs were cool. And then they're like, all right, if you like games, you got to check out Axie Infinity. Like this is 2020 timeframe, and I'm like, okay, now that is more of a game. Although to me, it looked like a game built by business and finance people who like hired game folks, because like the DNA of that game was like play to earn money, and isn't that exciting, and look what you can do, and not as much like isn't this an amazing game experience. It was leading with play to earn, which was really cool. It's like one of the things that you can do with blockchain, and it really blew open the door as far as possibility space and got people interested in Web3 gaming, the category. And I'm really thankful for that, because after 2020, a lot of people started talking about blockchain games, and I probably talked to all of them. Like I was minting thousands of NFTs in 2021 and 2022. And any of these founders who said, we're making a game, I'm in their DMs. I'm like, how can I help? What are you building? Do you want to work together? And just really not finding the right fit. Like a lot of these guys were very traditional crypto people who were like, when Lambo, and if number ain't going up, then let's go do something else. And I'm a product DNA guy. I'm like, where are the experiences that are really unique here? And let's do those. Monetization will come, So I just couldn't find many like-minded people that wanted to be here for 15 years and make great games. And then I ran into Tim, CEO of now Koin, who had just launched an NFT in September 2021 called the Koin Games Development Squad. And it was just him, an artist and a dev, and they're not game developers, right? Tim comes from tech sales. He's a gamer and he loves games, but he's not a game developer. Neither was the lead artist, and neither was the developer at the time. And the promise being made was very low bar for that time. If you were minting NFTs in 2021, you remember people saying, we're going to make an MMO and it'll be done in 6 months, mint our NFT. And as a game developer, and I know you know this, John, you're like, right, like good luck with that. And MMOs are one of the most intimidating genres, let alone you're going to do it in 6 months.
Super hard to build a successful game in the space, and people take 5
Yes.
years, 7 years, 10 years to build an MMO. Some of them are still, some of them got launched on Kickstarter 10 years ago and are still not out, right? Like, so
exactly.
Really hard category.
So the promise for the Koin Games NFTs was just like, look, we're 3 guys. This is Tim, an artist and a developer. We want to build a game together with the community because we think that's exciting, and we don't have a game team yet, right? But if you guys, buy these NFTs, then you'll be able to join us on the journey to build a game together. That was it. That was the only thing that was promised. And so I looked at that and I'm like, okay, we're not in the over-promise and under-deliver category there. That seems achievable. And when Tim and I met, we clicked right away because I asked him a very direct question. I'm like, Tim, do you want someone on your executive leadership team that will fight for a user experience, sometimes against the revenue opportunity, to balance those? And he said, I would like 3 of you. Do you know any more? And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be an amazing match. Like, the DNA of our studio could be so strong with a product and business, executive team. And so, the rest is history. We set off to make a game, and we're building Project O. We took a little while to decide on that, but we can talk about that as we go forward a bit.
Well, I do want to drill down into that, and specifically, I want to maybe go right after that elephant in the room. So 5 years ago, I wrote an article about NFT-based games and digital collectibles, and my use case for why this would be a thing was I talked about the original NFT game, which wasn't even digital. It was a physical paper card game, and that's Magic the Gathering, which I thought had all of these elements of composability and creativity and trading. Like, it was already there. I wasn't the only person who noticed the relationship between collectible card games and the applicability to Web3. And then a ton of people started working on this idea because it was kind of like the obvious thing. But it's really, really hard to build good games in this space, especially those with staying power. So, Kevin, I want you to just think about your thoughts on that in a moment. Before you answer, I also just want to say to the audience who's showing up here, we've got over a couple hundred people that have already shown up. There's a reason why we do this as a live program, right? I used to do YouTube videos and do all this editing afterwards and post it online with people. And that was great. I love doing it. But you don't have the community engaging with a YouTube video the way you can with a live video. So if you're here and showing up for this conversation, you've got an expert who has 3 decades of game development experience, who's basically worked in a ton of genres, a ton of platforms, and now he's doing Web3 and is one of the most interesting, and I think going to be very successful in this space. Like, use this opportunity to post your questions so that we can get Kevin to talk about all your hard questions. And we can even put you on camera, by the way. So if you've got a camera, we'll bring you right on StreamYard and you can talk with us. Oscar will make that happen. Just post in the comments that you'd like to do that. But do post your comments. I know that people are still trickling in here. We're going to give you lots of opportunities for it. But let's go to my first one, Kevin. So collectible card games. Mm-hmm. You said you would go after probably the genre that's almost, even though it's like the obvious one, the hardest to succeed in my opinion. So talk about that.
Well, there are a few no-brainer. When I first got into Web3, I'm like, what are the games that make a lot of sense? Because why would you do Web3? The only reason to do Web3 is to do something interesting with digital property ownership, in my opinion. Like, don't use the blockchain if you don't need it. So I wanted to do something that you couldn't do without it. And the no-brainer genres were trading card game, loot extraction shooter, massively multiplayer game, and cozy game like a Stardew Valley or an Animal Crossing could be really interesting there. And then there's a bunch of adjacent games. And so when we first started, I actually didn't want to go right into the Dragon's Den of one of those 4 obvious ones. So our first game was actually adjacent. We wanted to try an auto battler, like a TFT, a Dota kind of game, you know, but with a really interesting ownership experience. But those games were very historically hardcore and niche, and we wanted to go really, really wide rather than a niche game. So, you know, imagine like TFT for your kids. Like anyone could play, not children, but like for anyone rather than a hardcore niche. And that's what we set off to do first. And we had a product that was shaping up to be there. Supercell was working on this too. They had a game in development called Clash Mini. It never got to launch. It got in beta for like a year. It was actually pretty good. And so we were like, hey, if Supercell sees something in this area, we're on to the right track, because they have a good sense and radar of, you know, what will be good in games. So I like that they're doing what we're doing, and we all see something. But we, you know, we were running into problems while developing that, because one of our product goals is that the game had to be fun to watch, and that it's a goal you don't often hear in Web3 game development, and even Web2 game development, honestly, for that matter, because I think the assumption is, hey, if the game is amazing, then everybody will play it, everybody will stream it on Twitch, and there'll be a ton of viewers, right? But that is not always the case. So that actually is part of a product goal that we have, and there are features in our design that are more for viewers than players in some cases because of that. We just feel that flywheel is a virtuous cycle of amazing things. If you get, you know, the game is amazing to watch, people will want to stream it, people will want to play it. And we weren't able to get that with the auto battler design that we had. It was just too hard to watch. It wasn't, you know, the game was fun, but it wasn't hitting on all cylinders. So we were like, man, I think we need to scrap it and pivot. So, you know, we took the best from that design, which was like the pacing and the simultaneous turns that auto battlers have, and we pivoted that over to TCG, which was much more natural right here. But then now the challenge is like, my God, everybody's building a TCG. Does the world really want another one of those? Like, our first question is going to be, why would I play your game when Hearthstone exists? And so we have to have a slam dunk answer to that question immediately, like at the screenshot level, you know, which was really ambitious and really hard. But we're like, we've made games that hit, you know, 100 million, you know, up to 1 billion players before in Web 2. We could do this. And I think a lot of people were waiting for a new TCG. Like, look at the TCGs that have been successful digitally in traditional games. There's like Hearthstone, which has been there since 2013. And you got a few other little indie games like Slay the Spire and stuff like that. But like, nothing has knocked Hearthstone off of its perch until, you know, Marvel Snap came around and like shook it, but didn't really knock it off. And so we saw a sweet spot in collectible card games on the complexity spectrum between Hearthstone and Marvel Snap. There was really nothing there, you know, simpler than Hearthstone, which was only theorized before Marvel Snap came out. You can't make a game simpler than Hearthstone. It'll be a children's card game, you know, but now that Snap came out, we're like, they went too far, like something with more depth and, you know, competitive feel than Marvel Snap. And that was a spot we didn't see occupied in the spectrum of card games. So that's where we wanted to land. Mobile, we want to be mobile, we want to be PC, probably mobile first. And there's an opportunity there for people who really liked Marvel Snap but want a little more meat. So that's why we landed on TCG and with a fun to watch product goal.
I want to double click a little bit more of the design aspects of the game that you're leaning into, but I think there's also an interesting business story around what you just described, because you talked about starting with something else and then pivoting to something quite different. Like, I had that same experience with most of the games that I built. Like, when I built a Star Trek game, we built like 4 versions of a game, including, by the way, a CCG-ish game. And I was like, this is not going to be it. And then we had like an RPG incarnation of it and a couple of other weird things that didn't quite work. And it was only after the 5th version of the game, which took us like a year to get to. We probably should have done it in 6 months and not a year. There's maybe another story out of that because we maybe spent too much time on ideas that weren't quite working. But we spent a year kind of finding, not really even finding the fun, just finding the game. Like, and then we had to spend another year on that game before it was good enough to even show to other people. But to me, this is one of the most important things for a game studio is velocity of development, shots on goal, trying things, not being married to your original idea, maybe being really married to an audience or someone that you want to go after, you want to like understand better than anybody else. And then once we were in the game, we also had to like iterate a lot within the game and perfect it. But
Yeah.
talk about that. Like, what's your business story that you take away from the experience so far that you think other game developers would be
Yeah.
able to benefit from?
Yeah, you have to be. I mean, it helps. It like playing games every day for 30 plus years gives you a pretty good radar of if a game could be good or not. And it's much harder to be introspective about that. When it's your game, you're like, that's our baby, you know, and no one wants to acknowledge the possibility that maybe their baby is ugly, right? But you have to be able to do that. And, you know, we were definitely able, and I don't think our baby was ugly, but you know, when like if you wouldn't say, God, there's something amazing, I will actually want to go home and play this when I'm done with work. Like if you're not saying that and it's your genre, there's Darby Dragons there. And we were just not feeling that it was going to be that good. You know, when we take our, hey, we're working on this game off and put ourselves in the minds of players, we're like, it's good, but not great. And I think going into a Web3 game, the stakes are higher because not only are you, you know, trying to make a sustainable game that people want to play, but there's all this baggage and uphill battles that you're going to have to face because there are people who are anti Web3 in traditional games. And they just hear the words Web3 and they're like, crypto, scams, NFTs, Ponzi schemes, out, 1 star. I haven't even played the game. It's probably a scam. Like you have to overcome that. And so your game actually has to not only be a good traditional game, but it actually has to be one step better than that to fight the uphill climb of the perception of people who just really don't understand Web3 and don't want to or aren't in a place where they're willing to do that right now.
So part of your story is to try to find the sweet spot in the market that makes it more accessible, but without oversimplifying things. What else is hard about building a CCG?
I think, you know, getting mechanics that are familiar, and the hardest thing about building a CCG is not building a clone of another CCG, right? There are so many designs out there and so many indie games that I've tried on Steam or physicals. And I'm like, hey, this game's kind of cool, but why would I play that when there's Magic? Or why would I play that when there's Hearthstone, right? They're just too similar to these other games. So the hardest thing about building one is getting off of that and not being so unfamiliar that it takes an hour to learn how to play your game. And that's the sweet spot that we've tried to hit. You know, if you look at our game and you've seen our demo, you'll recognize a lot of familiar pieces within board games and card games. You'll say like, oh, that part looks inspired by Snap. That part looks inspired by Hearthstone. That part looks inspired by some other game that I've played or a board game. And so having those familiar pieces makes it really easy to learn. You're like, okay, that number is probably health. Okay, it is. You know, that will probably do damage. Okay, it does. And so once you are able to learn it really quick, then you'll see the mechanics that are different. You know, and it becomes easy to learn. When people see videos of our gameplay or when we were doing the pitch deck, the initial impression is they're like, oh, it looks a lot like Marvel Snap. But once you play it, you'll say, well, this doesn't play anything like Marvel Snap. There's combat, right? Their positioning matters. Like you just don't have any of that. But, you know, it helps to just be like, oh, it looks like something I know. I'll try it. So, you know, that was honestly the biggest challenge. But we solved that really early back in paper prototyping. We're like, this isn't going to play anything like, you know, well, it's not going to be a Hearthstone clone. and it's not going to feel like a Marvel Snap clone. But, you know, the similarities will help.
So you've carved out sort of this space that you saw as unique between a Hearthstone and a Marvel Snap. You have identified sort of this need for like the novel game mechanics, the novel experiences you're going to have in the card game that makes you not want to just go back to Hearthstone or Marvel Snap or Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or whatever your default game is. Where does Web3 come into this, though? Why not have just been another mobile game like Marvel Snap? Why not be on Steam?
Yeah, this is my favorite part, honestly. And the whole reason why I left my comfy career at Microsoft, where I could have retired and decided to pursue this, was to explore the Web3 intersection. And having watched all of the games, all of the Web3 games that are out there, and kind of seeing all these shots on goal, my story was that, you know, there needed to be, you know, there needed to be something around digital property ownership, and I like to call it experiential ownership. The experience of ownership needed to be unique and interesting to blockchain. And the way that the analog that I use to that comes from physical ownership. Like, I have things that I own, that I collect, and I could show them to you, and I could tell you these really cool stories of how I got them or what they mean. And some of those are entertaining to people who also like the things that I have or whatever. But those are all like in my head. And think of a world where the items themselves could tell these stories. Like, look what this thing has been through. Look, press play on the item and watch this cool video of the things that this item has done. Like, you pick up a knife and you're like, it projects a video of the things that the people who have carried it and all of the kills that it's had. Like, digital can do that kind of thing, but people aren't exploring the stories of those. And when you have items that you've owned and have interesting provenance that are experiential and stories, like, is your first inclination going to be to go sell that thing for profit? I mean, maybe, because like collectors will really want it, but also it's going to have a lot of emotional value to the people who created those stories with those items. And they're like, you know, these are like people, you use Magic the Gathering, which is a really good example, because there are people who have boxes of those cards on their shelves in their closet. And other people might say, you know how much that collection is worth? And they're like, yeah, I don't care. I might play again. The cards, I have stories. The cards are meaningful to me, right? And there are people who play Magic the Gathering, you know, and for fun. And there are also people who, like, you know, throw away the commons, sleeve the rares, flip them on eBay. Like, it's a really good analog to a sustainable marketplace and, you know, a secondary market, and also great game. And you can kind of be either one of those personas or both of those personas. And so, you know, that's the thing that got me excited. I'm like, you know, card games can offer a world where the cards can tell your stories, right? You're like, I put blood, sweat, and tears into this card. I won this amazing match with it. And how cool would it be to have that on the card, where the card could show the story, like show the final match by clicking a link on the card, you know, and then if I give that to you, that's imprinted on that card forever. Like, that's just so cool to me. And so we're going to try to light some of those stories up with our collecting experience, which will be on the Web3 side.
So you talked a lot about provenance, which I love that. Like, it's literally one of the things I wrote about 5 years ago in this article that I referenced. We'll have to surface it. I think it's actually still pretty current today, because so many people who started in 2020 were just flipping NFTs and flipping tokens and weren't really going to build anything or couldn't build things. It's nice to see some of those ideas coming back to life. But I love the idea that provenance and the history of an item brings more value to the collector economy on it. You also sort of touched on another aspect, which is composability, and the idea that items can also change and kind of have these inherent combinations, and that becomes part of the tradable content. So can you maybe explore this idea of composability in your game, or maybe Web3 in general, that still seems a little underutilized, even though it's one of the inherent advantages of blockchain?
Yeah, I know you're going to remember this, but in 2021 and 2022, do you remember the story was like, hey, man, you can own your items and have them on blockchain. And even if the game studio shuts down, you still got your sword. And that's awesome. And I remember thinking, that's not awesome. Like, that's terrible. Like, what are you going to do with your sword if the game studio shuts down? Come on. Like, that is not that cool. And furthermore, if you do have a sword with a cool function and a story, what other game developer is going to be like, yeah, I want to put all of those in my game and use the economy that someone else developed? Like, that's not how game development works, right? We want to make our own economy and our own items and our own stories. We don't just want to grab somebody else's stuff. So that whole thing that was going around 2021, 22 timeframe about interoperability, and it doesn't matter if the studio shuts down, was complete crap from my perspective. But there is a version of that I think it echoes and rhymes, and it is in the provenance and composability story. It's like, and so I'll tell you how it works for us. So we will have these cards in our game, and I also think the onboarding into Web3 is being missed right now. So our onboarding into Web3 story is one that has zero friction. It is completely invisible and it's completely seamless. You don't even know it's there unless you're looking for it. That's how it's going to need to be, in my opinion. If you see a Web3 game and it has Connect Wallet on the front page of the experience, they have already failed. In my opinion. I have strong opinions about this though, so maybe that's a little harsh. But our experience is completely invisible, and I'll tell you what I mean, and I'll roll the story. So you'll be able to collect cards in our game. They will be off chain. You'll open packs. You'll get exciting cards. You'll go on journeys with those cards. You'll level up those cards as your gameplay and your account gets more mature. Not functionally, but cosmetically. The card will get prettier. It will get more dimensional, more 3D. Visual effects will start appearing on it, and it will diverge from other people who have the same card. So your card and my card will look different, and that's cool. They'll start to become unique as you level them up. And when you get them to the top level in our game, we're still working out exactly what that looks like. You'll have the option of getting the card graded. And that's a throwback to physical collectibles, where what do you do when you have an amazing card? You throw it in a case and you send it off to PSA to get graded. In physical cards, grading means how scratched is it? How's the quality? Is it centered? And in our game, grading means, what is the quality of the traits you rolled as you were upgrading it, and how rare are those, and what has the card done? So it's a neat analog to physical collectibles that we're putting in. And when you get a card graded, which costs soft current, some currency in our game, off chain, you will be able to unlock a couple of experiences because the card has been graded. And players will want to do that. One of those experiences, wagering the card. The other one is getting all the matches stored on it, like that I mentioned, that you can share with friends and replay forever. So people are going to want to be like, oh, yeah, I want a graded card. And it only costs, like 50 gold to do that or whatever. We don't know yet. But secretly, what we did when you graded it is we minted it on chain and threw it into a wallet that we made for you and didn't tell you. And you don't even know. Like, as a Web2 person, you don't even know. And these are people who think like, what do you mean I don't own my items in World of Warcraft? Don't I? And you have to be like, well, technically no, Blizzard owns those, and you can't take them out of the game. But
kinda, sorta.
In our game, you will own them, and we just totally Trojan horsed that because we didn't make you click anything. We didn't ask you to connect the wallet. We didn't say put your MetaMask in here. We didn't. Are you sure you want to confirm this transaction? None of that crap. We literally threw it in the wallet, and it for your perspective, it just now says graded. It's in a case. It has a QR code, and you're like, oh, that's really cool, and it does all these cool things. But a Web3 person's going to be like, oh, sweet, it's on chain, so can I withdraw it? And the answer is, of course. If you link a self-custody wallet to your account, you can take, do whatever you want. But to Web2, it's completely invisible and seamless. And I'm really excited that I just don't see a lot of games doing it that way. Like, they're still all hitting Connect Wallet, break the frame of the app, the transaction approved. And that's just garbage, right? Like, a billion gamers are not going to accept a UX that's got that much friction, you know?
I mean, we already know that all you have to do is add like 100 milliseconds of latency to a purchase transaction, and you probably halved
You've
your
already
conversion.
table flipped, right?
Yeah, like you've already fucked up your whole game economy just from that. So go from 100 milliseconds to now the way you do it is establish a Coinbase account, buy some currency, then get a MetaMask account set up. Wait the week or two before Coinbase will let you move your coins out, put it in your MetaMask, figure out what this click to connect wallet thing is, see a million wallets on there, not know the heck what's going on. Like, am I using MetaMask? Am I using Phantom? What the hell is a chain anyway? Like, and then that sounds like a lot worse than 100 milliseconds. So you are focusing on a top of funnel experience that's really the same as any other game. So if people love the game, just like they love a Marvel Snap.
They won't even know. There are going to be players in our game who have NFTs that don't know they have NFTs, right? And that's really cool. They'll be like, officer, I swear I did not put that NFT in that wallet. I didn't know, you know, like I have no idea how that got there because it was seamless, right? And that's what we want the experience to be. And we want you to want it not because it's an NFT, but because you want the experience that it unlocks in our game. And there will be people who are like, but then I can sell it. That's fine. Like you can do that. That's one of the things that you can do with things that you own. But I don't feel like we needed to put that on the back of the box. It's just like, obviously ownership comes with that. I think the more interesting things are, what else can I do with it because I own it? And we've got some neat stories like sharing replays and things like that. And, you know, following the provenance of what happened to the item. And, you know, you've won 700 matches with a 100% win rate with that card. That's insane. I would love to have that. Like, will you sell it to me? You know, I think the only thing that traditional Web3 folks are going to be, you know, looking at here is like, from a Web2 player perspective, the only surface area they will get of the traditional Web3 side is occasionally there will be a collector who like knocks on their door and says, hey, I would love to trade for your card because it's rare and it has something I want, you know, because we have the collector ecosystem. And that's where we put the majority of our Web3 experience is on the other side of a very small fence where collectors can collect. And, you know, it's very similar to physicals like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, where collectability is sustainable, and even people who want to resell those for profit, like you can sustain a percentage of people who like to do that, and it's in the collector ecosystem. It's been proven from games like Pokemon and Magic that can exist at scale, and so that's where we decided to put the Web3 native experiences over there, so that people can either play for fun or they can collect, or they can do both of those things, but neither pollute each other with like a play to earn experience that you can't sustain for years.
So Kevin, we just had this question that came in from LinkedIn. The question, sorry, I guess you were anonymized by LinkedIn, but what if they like their own wallet? I guess the inherent question in that is, what about that crypto native guy who's wants to be his own bank and you know, all the personal sovereignty stuff from like, did you just give the answer for that person, or do you feel like that's even your customer?
Totally. Absolutely. You can do that. So the nice thing about Web3 people is that we are used to horrible UX. We're used to bridging, for God's sake. If anybody has done bridging, then you are a level 10. You know,
I bridged Bitcoin into Ethereum. That was fun.
Oh yeah, or you've swapped cross.
Wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum is probably the craziest thing you can actually do.
Exactly. But, exactly. Yeah. So we don't have. So yes, of course, the Web3 native is going to say, how can I link my own wallet? And you go into account settings wallets to do that, right? Like it's where you think it was, and we don't have to put it on the front. So you'll link a self-custody wallet to your account, as many as you want, and you delegate wallets, whatever. And then, you know, if you have an item and you're Web3 native and you understand what that means, and we put it in the wallet for you, you can withdraw it to your own wallet and do whatever you want with it.
So we've been talking about a lot of the design issues, and now you've touched on the business issues. But what's what's hard about making a Web3 game that's different than any of the other game categories that you've worked on before?
For me, it comes down to how you're going to serve the different personas. So I wrote an article on my Twitter, it's pinned to my Twitter profile, on the personas that are around in Web3 gaming. And I really tried to just make it, it's like a 6-minute read. I try to make it really casual. And we see Web3 as three personas and hybrids of those personas. And we all know who they are. Like, the elephant in the room is when we named them, right? So we named them Billy, Vinny, and Chad. And so like in our world, Billy is a Web 2 gamer, like a traditional gamer who loves games, plays them for fun, doesn't even know what a MetaMask or Web 3 is. And if he plays your game, it's going to be for fun. Then our second persona we call Vinny, and that is the profit motivated individual. When Lambo, when Moon, I need to see number go up, and that is my primary motivation. Even if I also like games, I'm here for the money. And then the third persona, which I think is actually the most interesting, is an evolution of our Billy named Chad. And Chad is a Web3 aware gamer who still has fun as a primary motivation. And there's a whole spectrum. It's not just three. There's a hybrids of all of them. Most of the people in Web3 gaming are some flavor of Vinny Chad hybrids, right? I myself am the Vinny Chad hybrid. But there are pure Chads who just like the ownership experience, and there aren't many of those people. So to roll this back to your question, what's interesting and hard about Web3 game development? I think it's it's acknowledging these personas and deciding how you want to serve them. And we decided that we wanted to serve all three of these personas. We want to serve the fun motivated gamer. We want to serve the Vinny, who's that little more speculative, kind of individual. And the way we decided to serve all those needed to be in a way that didn't cross the streams in a non-sustainable way. And that was the hardest part, was, coming up with our fence that I mentioned that those two experiences are on either side of, and I don't see a lot of Web3 game studios doing that. Most of them are still blending everything. They're either making a fully on-chain game, which is fine, right? Like where the gambling speculative experience is the game, and then I see people who are just like, let's just make a Web 2 game and put NFTs in it. And there really is no experience for that, speculative persona. And so, we acknowledge that all three of those personas are here in large numbers, and we wanted to make sure and hit all of them with some experience loop.
There's an interesting comparison to some of the economic conversation that I had with Sinjin on last week's program, which, by the way, everybody should check out. This is, he comes from this background in like literal
poker.
Online gaming,
yeah.
Like poker, exactly.
Yeah.
And he made this interesting point, which is like, if you're just catering to the value extractors, which you could say in Web3 are really the people who have no intention of playing the game, they're going to buy NFTs at a value point, hoping to resell it to somebody else later, then you're kind of like building a poker game, but just for sharks. And the problem is, if it's just for sharks, like they're not going to stick around because actually there's no value to extract from. And that was sort of I think he would admit, kind of evil, but very, sober realization of like what some of the underlying economics of Web3 might look like. You're going to have extractors and you're going to have people that can be extracted from. The issue is the people that are going to have value extracted from them have to be having fun. They have to be there for a reason. Like they have to be able to aspire to a great experience. And I'm not saying that you're exactly that form, but I'm just reminded of it, which is everybody well, I don't want to say everybody, but the vast majority of games that I saw, or quote unquote games that I saw proposed for Web3 over the last few years, they were really just for these whales and speculators. And they're effectively a Ponzi game where you just hope to not be the last speculator out.
Yeah, it's like musical chairs, and that's what you see in the play to earn genre that we remember from 2021 and 2022 is like, remember that every transaction has someone on the other side of it, right? So if someone sells something, there has to be a buyer, and if everybody wants to grow up to be a seller, then you're going to run out of buyers unless you're doubling your new users every period, right? And that's just impossible to do. So the way I look at it is, and look at Magic the Gathering. They have sellers, they have people that sell
Sure.
the cards. But when you look at how big the slice of that pie is relative to their entire
Very small.
user base,
Yeah.
it's very small. It's like, 1 to 3% of people are out there on eBay flipping cards, making a business out of it, extracting value. Whereas the 90x% of it are the people who are paying customers and leaving the boxes of cards on their shelf in the closet. So you need more of those people by a factor of almost 100,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, totally agreed with, and Sinjin's great, by the way. He gets it as well. He's been in game development for a while. And, poker is a really interesting case study because you could say, like, most people play, isn't poker a play to earn game? And it is, right? But what's really interesting about poker is that the social contract of how the game works and who can earn is on right up front. It's just like only the top tables are going to make money. And if you decide to play poker, you are accepting that, knowing that that's how the game works. And if you're just like, I'm not really that good at poker, I probably can't make any money, then you get to make that decision up front, which is very different from how play to earn games are advertised, where you're like, everybody can quit their job and make money playing games, where that's not really true and it's not sustainable. So there's a transparency and expectations problem with that too.
When I show up at the poker tournament at the casino and I put my $200 in, I pretty much know I'm going to lose that $200. But I'm going to have, I don't know, depending on how I do that night, 2, 3, 4 hours of pretty solid entertainment, and I get to see some really good players. Hopefully, show me how to really play this game.
And maybe you get lucky and have some great emotional moments, and yeah, that you're okay with that contract, right? Like you're accepting that up front. Yeah,
and there's a little bit of maybe sleight of hand at work in Web3 gaming around this idea of play to earn, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So we talked about Web3, like from a design standpoint, what's hard. What's hard about the technical aspects of it? Like games are always technically complex because of how much engineering that it's like the only form of entertainment that requires that much engineering as well as that much design. Is there a hard technology aspect to this as well? Because it seems like a lot of people just like struggle to even launch. They can't figure out how to get the basic mechanics working beyond like connect your wallet in a web page.
It depends what your Web3 experience is going to be. I mean, fully on-chain games with game state stored on the blockchain and all of that are going to have bigger technical requirements. Our game is mostly almost exclusively run off-chain, and it has, Web3 experiences almost adjacent to it. Like, I don't even know if we're going to have any direct Web3 calls in our game client. I don't think we do. I think all of them kind of go out to a service that does the Web3 stuff for us. And, the amount of Web3 calls per minute are extremely low for us because we don't need the blockchain all the time. We only need it for very discrete, moments in our experience loop. So, that's very light. And I think, you have things like, well, what chain do you want to use? And, what UX do you want? And because we wanted it invisible, seamless, and frictionless, that made our hunt for like who to partner with on the Web3 side kind of a tough journey, because everybody's like, yeah, use our wallet, and it pops up this thing and you have to confirm it and you got to input a seed phrase and don't store that online. And I'm like, nobody wants to go through that. Like we want to just have like a non-custody wallet that, is seamless. And it's been really hard to find that, but I think now more people are starting to get it. So there are more product offerings that do that. We wanted a good back end that could bridge the gap between traditional game database stuff and Web3, and we found Beamable that you guys did. And
thank you, Kevin. No, I
and
appreciate
that, and yeah, and it was awesome. And we looked at a lot, right? We looked at Play. I mean, look, there are so many SDKs out there that offer to do the same thing, and a lot of them are just, if you know what you're doing, you'll look at those and be like, yeah, that's not really going to meet our needs. So we're very happy and excited to be working with Beamable. And, because it offers us the seamless, frictionless experience that we believe players are going to want.
So Ryan has a fun question here. And by the way, be like Ryan, ask a question here in the feed. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to hopefully use that time to get more questions from the audience. But Ryan's question is kind of like what I was hearing from the early days of Web3 gaming, even before we heard this term Web3 gaming, like when we were just calling it like blockchain games. Like there were some people who are like, as soon as people realize you can own your own assets, like you would never want to play a free-to-play game. You'd never want to be in an MMO where Blizzard actually owns your favorite sword and they could take it away at any moment or change everything. So Ryan's question almost harkens back to those early people that, I'll hold off on saying they overhyped it, but like there was a lot of overpromising in the early days of Web3 gaming that it was just going to take over like a flood, and it obviously hasn't done that yet because Web3 games are still sort of early and getting off the ground. It's sort of like, I think we are with Web3 games where mobile games were before the smartphone caused it to be a real category. What do you think of this though? Like, where do you side with this idea of Web3? Do you think it ultimately replaces everything, even if we forget for a moment the speed at which that will happen?
No, I don't think it replaces everything. I think it becomes a style of game. Like mobile free-to-play didn't replace everything. It's just a style of game. And a lot of people like that style of game. And I think it will be the style of game. It's just like, okay, games where, digital property ownership offers interesting experiences that you couldn't get in traditional games. There's some interoperability. There's some composability. Perhaps these are more transparent. Like I can't see Web 2 doing transparent development with the community as much. I mean, you can do that. And when I was at Microsoft, we actually did a little bit of that. We made an inner circle and we let our beta testers, find out about the games we were making before we were making them. But we could do that because we were making like Solitaire and Minesweeper. So it wasn't like we got a $5 million deal that could fall through if the NDA was broken, right? Like Solitaire. So the reason why a lot of Web 2 game studios can't talk about the games that they're building, which is frustrating for players, and it's actually frustrating for the developers who would love to tell you what we're working on, but you can't, is because of those deals and the IP, and you can't let someone come in and steal your ideas and bring it to market faster than you. And I think Web3 at the moment is a little more grassroots in that category. It's a little more, let's develop with everybody else, with the community, with other founders. And I love that so much. I don't know if that will be around in 10 years when it gets more competitive, but I love that we're there now. And so, the promise of Web3 is it's just a different kind of game. It's a style of game. It's a style of game development that's not going to take over. It's not going to replace Web 2. It's not going to replace, your Last of Us's and your great console games or your great sweaty PC games. It's just going to be, if you want these kind of experiences, which are nascent today, and in 2 years there'll be some really nice shots on goal. You'll look for that Web3 tag in Steam.
Yeah, I think for things like Last of Us, great game, one of my favorite games of all time. Actually, I love storytelling-based games. Like, you wouldn't want to reveal you want to reveal just enough to get people enticed. It's kind of like making a movie. Like, I hate the trailer that basically is like, I guess I watched the movie already from watching this trailer because I think I saw all the interesting things about it. You don't want to give away too much because you want the story to unfold and to have that joy of that experience. There's other kinds of games that are more socially oriented, where the structure of the play or even the IP of the game is going to be important to it. Where even in Web 2, though, I feel like there's a little bit of a Stockholm syndrome even within Web 2, where you just believe that you have to have this, keep it all super close, when in fact they're hurting themselves by doing that. And even with IP, there's no hard rules on that. Like when I built a Star Trek game, I brought an alpha build of that game to Penny Arcade Expo and had thousands of people play this game in a really super early version. In fact, we measured people's actually measured KPIs as people came into the booth and played it on iPads to see how deep into the tutorial they got. And then we shipped a different build in the second half of Penny Arcade Expo just so we could do an A/B test with thousands of people. I don't know. CBS was, they didn't really care. I think they took the attitude of, hey, you're the game developer, you do whatever you think. We want the game to be successful, and that one was. So I don't know. I mean, this whole build in public idea is sort of words more associated with Web3 for whatever reason. But build in public is something that could apply to anybody. I don't know why more people don't do it in game development when it's so hard to capture a community. You've got 19,000 games on Steam last year. Like, it's just so hard to stand out. Like, unless you're building that community early in your development process, it's going to be hard to break through.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, I said this on Gamified last week on the podcast that I hope to see more build in public make its way into Web 2. Because like you said, you wouldn't want to do it with a story game where spoilers, like it's a really good point. But there are a lot of games that you could do it with. And I believe there should be more of that too. And hopefully Web3 will kind of shock, you know, if people see value in building that way, then perhaps more traditional game studios will do it as well. That would be awesome.
Kevin, we're getting to the last couple of minutes here. So in that time, I want you to share with everybody, like, what's your vision for Web3 here, or what do you want people to know about Project O, or all of the above? Like, what are those parting comments that the audience here, who's going to be a lot of people just looking for alpha as usual, but also game developers, what do game developers need to know about this market that maybe they don't know already, or that they're misinformed on?
I mean, the best thing I can say is look for, you know, it's about the good teams. There are a lot more of them now than there were in 2021, and there will be more in 2027 than there are now. So try to find good teams. Look for, like, John is doing a pretty great job trying to curate them so to help you find them. And you know, it's all about finding good teams and good products. And look for teams that are aiming to compete with traditional games, not people who are looking to compete with Web3 games. That's our approach, is like, look, we need to, if we can't go up against the best in Web 2, what are we doing? How are we going to hope to win in this space, right? You can't just say, let's be the best in Web 3, because that's not very challenging right now, but also I don't know that it's sustainable long term. Our game is going to be mobile first. It will be PC as well. It's going to be a traditional card game. We are ambitious. We're aiming to go up against the best card games in Web 2. We're gonna go up against Marvel Snap. We're gonna go up against Hearthstone, and we welcome that comparison. And and we're attempting to bring a Web3 experience that is very unique. I don't see anybody else in the entirety of the Web3 space right now that is mirroring our Web3 experience. So it will be unique. It's a hypothesis, right? There's no textbook on what the right way to do it is. So everybody's got their own shot on goal. But if you are interested in our approach, follow us on Discord. You can follow me. I use my real name, Kevin Lambert. You can follow our game, Project O. It's a letter O, not a zero. We chose a bad font. And that's not the actual name of the game. We're only calling it Project O because our trademark is still in application. Our game name will begin with an O, so the O is relevant. But
nice.
Until we have that, it's Project O. So hop in our Discord, get in with our playtest. We're doing playtests for our NFT holders, and we're not selling anything right now. So we're not shilling. We're just, we're raising funding to finish the game. And then you can get in with playtests that are coming up if you're one of our NFT holders, or if you want to join us in Discord. We're there every day. You can ask us questions on the game.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Everybody, check out Project O. Follow Kevin on Twitter. We'll include that in the links in case it's not already there, just so you can find these guys. It is an awesome team. That to me is the most encouraging thing about the Web3 teams that I've seen, or at least the ones that Beamable works with. They're working on Beamable probably because they're building a real game, if I do say so myself. Next week, speaking of great teams, we have Paul Bettner on Age of Empires, Words with Friends. Like, these are very memorable, well-known games in a couple different genres. He's taking on Web3. So see that episode next week, a week from today. It's going to be another eye-opener, I think. But for today, this has been an awesome conversation. Kevin, thank you so much for taking time out. Time is the most valuable resource of any game developer. You could have just been building a game. Instead, you're talking to us about it. I hope everyone learned something from this, and that at the very least you go download the game and try it and get into the community and see what's being built there. Thanks, Kevin, so much.
Thanks, John.
All right, take care, everybody. Until next time.